Hello, everyone. What?
Sorry, go ahead.
Hello,
Go for it.
everyone. This is part of it. You know that, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to More Than You See, where Deborah and I have conversations with creatives about their mental health journeys. As a reminder, we are not licensed practitioners or therapists, but hopefully in sharing our own struggles and victories, we can help you feel a little less alone and add some tools to your mental health toolbox.
Hi, everyone. Man, this is like just the feeling right now in the world where it's just like start, stop, start,
Yeah,
stop,
it's like,
start, stop.
er.
Oh, man. Thank you, everyone. Excuse me, for joining us for the season finale of the podcast, season 6. And
We
what I
made
wanted
it.
to do, I know, we made it. We actually have we have more episodes this season than any other season so far. So, yay
Remarkable.
us. I
Yay, that's
know.
great.
But the way that I wanted to close this season with my incredible co-host Shelley here is I wanted to go do some throwbacks because I've been doing this podcast now for 5 years, which is bonkers. And over the past many years, I've shared so many conversations and topics around creativity and grief and identity and healing and what it means to be a human in this world.
Mm.
And so I want to talk today by closing the chapter of this season by revisiting 5 tools that have changed the way that I think about mental health. Like, these are some of the things that I think about all the time. They're either things that a guest mentioned or it's something that I've read that I've shared with you all. But I just want to revisit those things because as we, start to have a little bit of a hiatus, I'm hoping that some of these tools will kind of like become little earworms in your brain and they will remind you that you're not alone and that there's always tools for you. And what I'm going to be doing actually, like in this little hiatus, is going to be doing revisiting some old episodes, re-releasing some old episodes. And we are going to start with the 5 that we're going to talk about today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share just little tiny pieces from these 5 episodes and these little tools, not as these are obviously not fixes. These are just ideas that we can use in order to live the most full human life that we can. So I'm springing this on Shelley. She has no idea what we're about to dive into.
I'm with you, the audience member, so I will be hearing
Yes.
in real time as well and reacting, and we'll chat about it.
Yeah, I'm excited. So we're gonna start like oldest idea to present. Okay, so for our first little tidbit, our little throwback tool, this comes from season 2. Michael Kostroff was the guest. Episode 4 was the conversation with him, and episode 5 was a takeaway conversation. So you could listen to either of those. And he introduced this idea of the importance of getting off the train and continually choosing your path. So Michael Kostroff is an acting coach. And so he basically, something that he tells his students is that you should quit acting or decide if you're going to quit once a month. Once a month, you should decide if you want to stay on the train or get off the train. And this is something that I think about all the time because I'm like, if I'm in the middle of something, project, especially something as insurmountable as an acting career,
Yeah.
it's like, is it giving me joy right now? Do I
Yeah.
still want to ride on this train or get the fuck off? I'm curious how that lands for you, Shelley, because I know you've kind of been
Yeah.
on and off the train right now.
I'm for sure, I've always been a person, I've been such a high achiever. I don't even want to say overachiever, even though that does feel like an accurate description, but
Mhm.
I'm a striver. I have high expectations, not only for myself, but just of like quality production and um, blah, 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 that I always thought and I always knew because I listened to keynote speakers or experienced actors when I was in school or interviews, all types of things, because I wanted to do this so badly when I decided, at 15, 17 years old, like, this is what I want to do. That I just know is like, you never give up.
Mhm.
You don't listen to the rejection. Like, you don't get off the bus. You just keep going. And eventually you will make it or get your big
Arrive.
break or
Right.
arrive, right?
Mhm.
And I think, that's all well and good when you're 17 years old and you have about zero life experience
Mhm.
going on, because you're like, yeah, that's no problem. I'll just ride it till I die.
Mhm.
And then life and relationships and family dynamics and death and grief, like, everything happens. And so I do think it is accurate to, especially at this moment in time in my life, where I think I've had to get off the train for a second,
Mhm.
not worry about. I think it's a cool analogy to think of it as a train, because the train makes multiple stops. You can always
Mhm.
get back on a train.
Exactly.
And so I never thought of it like that. I always thought of it as like, if you get off the train, that train is gone and it's never
Right.
coming back and
Right.
your dreams
It's
are
not a
over.
bus that you're gonna
Yeah.
miss.
And so, yeah, it is. And I mean, as an actor or, any kind of, maybe not any kind, but different kinds of entrepreneurial um,
Mhm.
and creative endeavors, I think it is important to assess. I've never thought of it as like every month, but mine probably hits like every 6 months, just as I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm going for the long haul.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it is something absolutely to think about, because I think for me, as we've talked in past episodes, kind of about like the addiction cycle that it can kind of lead
Mhm.
you into, or the roller coaster cycle of like the highs are really high and the lows are really low. That sometimes I think I'm finding this for myself at the moment of like, sometimes it's okay to want to stabilize.
Mhm.
Or at least for my life right now, I'm just like, I never thought I'd want to just maybe coast for a second
Mhm.
and like get my bearings and catch my breath, because it is, if you're going longevity wise, as they tend to say, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Right.
And I think, I don't know, maybe in my immaturity, I've been like, yeah, but if I sprint hard enough, I can get a little further ahead so
Mhm.
that then I could rest. And it's so, I don't know. Everyone obviously has to find their own pace to which they survive going about chasing their dreams and goals.
It's such a you know, it's a reminder of burnout. It's a reminder of hustle culture. It's a
Mhm.
reminder of the things that we're told as far as like, yeah, you just have to. I mean, there's 2 examples of this that I think about all the time. I mean, this is like in my brain all the time. Number 1, there's a quote about like that Will Smith said where he's just like, "I'm not talented. I just have worked harder than everyone else." I'm sure that there's some, there's huge amounts of luck and also, but
Yes.
that is something that's always stuck in my head. And then number 2, there was this singer, I don't remember if it was Ariana Grande. I don't remember who it was. There was a story about how her father had died and she had a concert that night. And so her father dies that morning, and instead of being like, I'm gonna I need to grieve and like take a step back and whatever. She was like, "No, I owe it to my fans. I'm gonna do this concert." And I just always remember that that was, I mean, even like, growing up in this industry where it's like, well, you're probably gonna miss your best friend's wedding. You're gonna miss your grandfather's funeral. You're gonna miss this. You're gonna miss that because that is currency in order to, like, if you miss the most important days of your life, because you are continually striving for your acting career or your career, that means that you are proving yourself enough. Like
Hmm.
it's just like
What are you
currency. The
what are you
exactly
willing
what
to
are you
sacrifice
sacrifice?
to
Exactly.
make it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
I've always, everyone says that in their
Right.
biographies and in their interviews and that, and I do find it interesting in when I was younger, I definitely was like, yeah, that's what it takes. Like, and people just need to
Mhm.
get on board with that. And people need to just understand that. And then I think as I've gotten older and just sort of having some priority shifts,
Mhm.
I mean, the deal I made with myself when I was young, I remember hearing a story about a woman who was like playing a lead role on Broadway or so. She was basically
Mhm.
living like what my dream was at the time.
Mhm.
Like she's got lead role on Broadway or she's been in tours or whatever the story was. And she fell in love and wanted to get married and left it to go move and be in a have a marriage life
Mhm.
and be done with that dream. And I remember thinking at the time, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I'll never be that woman. Like, I'll never
Mhm.
do that. I will never choose a relationship over my dream
Mhm.
career because
Mhm.
that sounds like something an idiot would do.
Mhm.
And I can, it's so easy to say that, like I said, when you're 17 and you have zero life experience and you've never really been in love
Right.
and, you don't know that priorities shift and change as
Mhm.
life goes on. And so now I can sit here at my age now and go, huh, maybe understand the context of the situation of like, how old was this person? Like, I
Mhm.
sit here, in my mid getting to late 30s going, yeah, you know what? Broadway is hard work, like, and
Mhm.
it's a lot of time, and it kinda makes sense if the woman wanted to go be in love and have a
Right.
family,
And make
you know?
sourdough bread.
Yeah, like, that makes sense to me now,
Right.
and here I was, judging the crap out of her.
Well, I mean, it's like not to bring Taylor Swift into this, but I'm going to. But I mean, the amount of like criticism there
Yeah.
has been for her new album, which whether you like it or not, like whether you like the music itself or not, the criticism that has come in is that she's just becoming a trad wife. She's just like deciding to like give everything up in order to marry this man and have babies. And it's
Mhm,
like two things can exist at the same time. You can desire a relationship and stability and children and all of those things and also still want a career. And and that's your decision. It is 100% your, like I don't know if you listened to the episode last week, but I talked about this quiz called the Values Bridge quiz, which you should do if you have not done it. And in it, and I talk about this last episode, it revealed or it showed me, I mean, this nothing was like I'm like learning about myself necessarily, but it just like,
sure.
reconfirms things for me. And for me, my like top 5 values are a relationship, my like primary relationship, and then the others are all about work. It's work, achievement, you know, a desire to be seen, a desire to like, make a difference, like all of them. And it's interesting because the quiz gives you basically tells you what conflicts. And it's like, which of your values are conflicting? And for
Mm.
me, relationship and everything else conflicts because you can't, like, this one requires 100% of your energy, and all of these also require 100% of your energy. And I'm
Mhm.
like, I hear you, quiz. And also, I disagree. Or I am going,
Also, no.
also,
Also, I'm in
right.
conflict with you.
Right. Well, but it is one of those things where it's like, it reminds me that the importance of having a relationship that understands that those things are also number one for me. And that
Mm,
was something that I didn't have in past relationships that now I'm so grateful that I have now, where I'm like,
mhm.
and that's again, going back to Travis and Taylor, they both have huge, like careers that are clearly super, super important to them. And so it's to me, I'm like, absolutely. Like, please sing about how you're going to have babies and populate the entire neighborhood with little Travis babies, because you're singing about it and you're still being creative. And I'm sure she's still going to be creative. And I can't wait for her to make a postpartum album because that's going to be fun. So,
Well, it's
you
also,
know,
it's
yeah,
kind of brings up an interesting idea for me too of like I hadn't heard this criticism. I haven't listened to the album, to be honest.
that's okay.
I'm not a huge Swiftie, but like that's
Hmm.
you can come at me for that. That's fine.
Yeah.
And but I hadn't heard about that criticism, but
Hmm.
it kind of brings about this idea of like enoughness too,
Hmm.
where it's like especially as an audience and consumerism where like of course like Taylor makes bops. She makes
Hmm.
relatable hits. I mean, my gosh, she's a hit song maker and she's had an insane career since for what 20 years,
Yeah.
15 at least. And
Yeah.
she's younger than me. Like, that's
Hmm.
the crazy. My point is the fact that we can have criticism over, like, yeah. And if she wanted to stop tomorrow, like you're
Right.
saying, and go be a housewife,
And get off the train.
has she not given you enough
Right.
to, listen to and bop along? But we could take this conversation to a
Oh, I know.
different sector of just like more, the
Hmm.
greed of like, this woman has been working her
Hmm.
entire life from childhood adolescence
Hmm.
to can't keep a can't keep a relationship values
Right.
based quiz
Right.
because who can keep up with the mega train that she has
Right.
created?
Hmm.
S-
Yeah.
Whole different conversation for and
I
I
I
mean
was
like
like, "Oh, man."
the fact that she can function as a
Mhm,
human being is remarkable.
mhm.
I'm sure financial freedom is helpful.
Yes, for sure, she has a lot of help. But I mean, you're totally right, and I think that it just again, it just brings us back to this idea of, like, evaluating, constantly evaluating
Mhm.
what brings you happiness, whether or not the thing that you're doing and obviously, this is, like, we're both coming from a very privileged place, like, we both, I mean, I have so many jobs that I do in order to stay on this train. I
Mhm.
have so many jobs that are supporting
Yeah.
this career of mine. However, it's interesting because I was listening to a podcast the other day and they were talking about, and it was an actor, and they were saying, that sometimes she gets criticism for spending money on workshops or for new headshots or whatever all the time. And she was like, I didn't go to medical school. So I don't have $150,000 in debt in medical school. So
Right.
if I'm constantly investing in myself, this is my medical school.
Mhm.
I thought that was an interesting fact, but I also want to say if you have been investing in yourself in whatever capacity and you want to get off that train, it's perfectly okay. I think that we have this idea of, cost fallacy where it's like, oh, I have to keep working on this thing because I put so much time and effort into it. And it's like, no, we only have one life. Constantly reevaluate. And if today is your day to quit, then today is the day to quit and
Mhm.
celebrate that and be okay with that.
And I will say too something that's just forefront in my mind about getting off the train, especially if you've been on the train for so long. I
Mhm.
think the thing that I wasn't expecting is how hard the change actually is, even if
Mhm.
it's like even if you're okay with the choice, even if it's
Mhm.
an active choice you're making, none of us like change. I've just been
Mhm.
speaking to various friends and like whether it's an abrupt change that was unexpected or whether it's an active choice to make a change. But right now we're talking in the, acting or creative sphere.
Mhm.
It's new. Our brains hate new. It hates the unknown. And just my own personal experience, like I have spiraled, figuring out how to function not
Mhm.
as, quote unquote, an actor every day.
Mhm. Right.
and it feels borderline wrong
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, even when it's like, I know the active choice for me right now is to rest and
Mm-hmm.
or just take a break.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously we know that that's hard on hustle culture and burnout like you're saying, but
Right.
it's just fascinating that like any kind of change, whether it be minor or major, we can't stand.
Right. Well, and I think, this really brings us to the second mental health little tool
Love
throwback
it.
that we've got, because season 4, episode 2, Laverne McKinnon was the guest. And she's actually a producing like mentorship coach that I work with, and she's incredible. But her other main thing that she does is she is a career grief coach. So
Mm.
she helps people walk through their grief if it's something like job loss or deciding to switch careers or something else. And a quote from the episode is that job loss is disenfranchised grief. You deserve to mourn it. So we have these ideas that when you lose a pet, when you lose a parent, when you lose a friend, when you lose your house, when you lose, like, when there's these big things, we're always like, of course you can mourn that. There's Hallmark cards you can get, that are for those specific things. But then when it comes to our jobs, we don't mourn them properly. And she really talks in this episode and really walks people through how to mourn it, accept it, and move on from it.
Mm.
Because I think that's just it's incredibly valuable, and there's so many good tips in that episode.
What an important job to have, because in our society today, what we are doing most of the time
Hmm.
is our job.
Right.
It's and it you hear various speakers and coaches talk on this, but you can I would steer away from doing this as we have
Hmm.
found in the mental health space, but it becomes part of your identity. What you do
Right.
becomes who you are because it's what you're doing 8 to 12 hours of your day, depending on what your job is, and or
Right.
5 days a week, 6 days, whatever. That's what we spend majority of our time doing.
Hmm.
It's interesting to me that if people are not grieving that, or like your body is going to grieve that no matter
Hmm.
whether you want to or not. It
Right.
but if you don't know how to, that's incredible that I didn't even know that a career grief coach existed.
I know. It's pretty incredible. And I think that, like, again, we have these societal expectations of what we can and can't grieve. I was reading this book called The Wedding People. It's a total trash book. But there's a character in there who's like a
I hope the
teenager.
author isn't listening.
I know. It's true. Let's see. Allison Esbach. I have it right here. Here, I'll
Trash
just
in a
grab it.
good way, like the
Trash in a
good.
good way. It's wonderful trash. I mean, it has this "Read with Jenna" sticker on it. I don't know what that means. Is this like
I
Jenna
love it.
from The Office? I don't know. Anyways, it's delightful, but it's trash. But it was interesting. I swear there's a point. There's a character in here who's a teenager, and they're on a boat, and the character is talking about how she lost her pet, and it's like a Tamagotchi. Like, her digital dog
Uh-huh.
has died, and she has this whole fit about how this digital dog has died, and everyone on this boat is like, that's dumb. You can, like, literally push a button, it'll restart, like, it didn't actually die. It's not a real like, your grief
Yeah.
is stupid,
Yeah.
basically. And then there's one character, of course, the main character, who's like the hero of the story. And, there's a love triangle related to this character's dad and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But she so beautifully articulates how, like, we attach ourselves to objects, to intangible things, to ideas of ourselves. And when we have to eventually let those go, we can have a visceral reaction to it. And no one else has to understand it but us. And I think that like that is such a really wonderful reminder. And Laverne is just a wonderful person. So I strongly recommend that everyone go back and re-listen to that episode
Hmm.
because she's, again, like I said, she's someone that I work with now. And so I get to see her every other week. And she is just such a delightful reminder of the difficulty of the industry and yet how I mean, going back to the train metaphor, we can stay on the train,
Well, and it's also
but we
interesting,
need that.
especially in the one thing you mentioned, which I was top of my mind, was the word attachment. You
Hmm.
just said it's it is. It's what we attach ourselves to, whether it's the dumbest thing like a digital Tamagotchi
Right.
or like things that are much more real.
Hmm.
And but it's interesting to think in like the acting sphere, the entertainment sphere, where things are ever evolving, ever changing, ever getting canceled, like are we
Right.
insane to the
Yes.
whole career
The answer is yes.
is just grief, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
but it's so interesting especially like as a theater person, I learned that lesson early, not
Hmm.
the like major forms of grief, but you just learn that like the job ends.
Right.
Like there
Right.
is an ending to this. And as someone who cried, every high school theater performance
Yeah.
because
Of
you're just
course.
like, yeah, this is the best time ever. And, da, da, da. And like
Mhm.
when I was doing a Christmas story a few years ago at the Amundsen and working with a bunch of like 10 to 12-year-olds and all the adults, we're packing our bags and we're like, "Oh, it was so great to work with you. Okay, hope to see you
Yeah.
again in the future." And all the kids are just like, "This is the end of my life." And like it kind
Uh-huh.
of was because they all
Yeah.
lived in various places. They very well could not see each other again. Like the stakes were very high for them. And it's
Right.
just funny as like when you've just done it so many times and you're like, yeah, okay, well it's just a job and it ends
Right.
and uh, I'm gonna save my tears for something.
For someone else. Someone and something else for sure.
Yeah, it's just fascinating to think about. But yeah, I mean, gosh, but it doesn't negate the fact when you get those special projects with those special people and
Hmm.
or, the biggest job you ever had to
Right.
date or whatever it is that eventually I think it's to kind of let yourself almost be present enough
Hmm.
because like eventually this isn't
Right.
going to last. At least with like a theater gig, you're like you have an ending date.
Right.
I
When you
haven't
go
been
into it.
Yeah, I haven't been a part of a production, like a television series or something where you just go, "Gosh, I hope we get like
Yeah. Open-ended.
every day could be the last." You could show up on set
Right.
and they go, "You know what? The network called and we're just not filming
We're
anymore."
done.
Like,
Right.
I've never really even thought about it like that, but I was just like, I don't know that my anxiety would you just don't think about it. You don't think about it. You
Right.
just think this is going to last as long as it's going to last
Yep.
until we all get the
Until it
word that
doesn't.
we're all going
Right.
home.
Right. Oh my gosh.
So yeah, the actors are insane.
Yeah.
Production people
But
are insane.
I mean, but so are that's just the nature. And that's why,
Yeah.
like Laverne works with people outside the industry too, where it's like, this is the nature of everyone in the workforce,
Mhm.
especially as we talk about, with all of the layoffs that are happening across, all
All
industries.
fields.
Yeah, which is a very negative part to part to leave. I'm like, and today could be your last day. That's fucking sucks. But
But the positive spin is
yes,
to
spin it.
be grateful for the time you have while it's happening.
It's
That's what
true. It's true. And actually, Okay, we're gonna jump forward because my third, which was gonna be like my fifth tool, but we're gonna bring it forward to number 3. So from season 6, from this season, episode 10, I talk about the book The Magic and the importance of transforming stress into gratitude. And this one I really talked about how I've been dealing with a bunch of stuff, like health stuff, not for me, but with a family member, and that doing a gratitude practice every single day um, has been so helpful over the past month, especially writing down 10 things that I'm grateful for and things that aren't working, and finding gratitude in those things that aren't working, like basically finding the spin like you just did,
Mhm.
because I think that we can get so bogged down in the negative, and in especially when we're in a state of stress and anxiety and depression, and it's so hard to see the blue sky behind those clouds. And I think that, like, having a daily gratitude practice like I talk about in this episode, and having this idea of, like, all right, so this really sucked today. Let's see if we can find one positive thing out of this
Mhm.
really shitty situation.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
I mean, I fully resonate with that very specifically, just even in this last month, because, and Deborah and I were talking about this before we started recording, of just the OCD that I've had this month has just been in a skyrocket level, which tends to lead me into like a sunken depression mode. And so I just feel very heavily on, I've had certain days where I pride myself on being the silver lining, positive
Mhm.
spin kind of person, because it's typically how I like to be.
Mhm.
But those days where you just go, yeah, there's nope, can't even find the positive spin, or you don't have enough energy to do it, or
Mhm.
you're just in that paralysis or stuck mode, and it just feels like it's going to last forever. But I have noted that my suggestion, on top of, finding like the positive spin on a highly negative situation or mind frame, is start small. So
Mm.
even like you said, if it's just one thing that I can find that is a good thing, or
Mhm.
that could be a good thing. I think even
Mhm.
to like reframe it as like, maybe it's not good right now, but like it could be, to sort of lift that energy into a
Mhm.
more positive space. But even if I just write one thing down, then that could be the good thing that happened, when you're like,
Right.
I wrote one thing down that, and then that usually leads to like two more things that you can
Right.
find. Cause that's the cool part, wrapping this back around to a train
Yeah.
analogy, of once you do one, you can usually find a few more things,
Mhm.
because you're starting, I guess, to open up your mindset, or open up that different pathway
Mhm.
to view in more of an optimistic kind of way.
For
Yeah, that's
sure.
beautiful. But it is frightening when your mind can get so dark.
Mhm.
And I think we can all, to varying degrees, relate on the darkness we feel or have
Mhm.
felt in our lives, and how much shame that can sort of bring on, or judgment in a sense. I think I get very judgmental of myself, of just like, I'm better than this. I shouldn't
Mhm.
be thinking or feeling so dark, or like,
Mhm.
"Ugh, I've just been so much better than this than I have before," or why
Right.
can't I just pull myself together and figure this out to be back where I was, on a
Mhm.
higher mountain peak kind of point.
Right.
But as they say, it's the peaks and valleys. And like,
Mhm.
I think there are times, I'll speak for myself, when like, I didn't know the valley could go so deep.
Mhm. Yeah.
You're like, I thought my valley was like pretty shallow.
Mhm.
And then you hit a valley that's like Wow, I didn't know this lived under there. I didn't know
Right.
the like abyss that lives in the valley. I'd like to go
Yep.
ahead and get on out.
Right. For sure.
Yeah.
Well, okay, another mental health tool. So episode 6, or sorry, season 6, episode 7. So again, from this season, I talked about something that I do that is very helpful for me in these valleys, especially as you're like on the slippery slope going down the hill,
Yeah.
which is something that Brian's therapist has him do. So it's now something that he does with me. Like when I'm starting to spiral about something, he's like, "Okay, let's take a breath. Let's do this exercise." And so what this exercise is it's basically like naming the emotion in order to tame it. And so basically what it is saying like, "I'm feeling sad and that makes sense because," and then you explain it to yourself. Or I'm
Yeah.
feeling super depressed, and that makes sense because I've had a really shitty week and I just broke up with my boyfriend and my dog doesn't love me right now, or whatever it is. But
That would
not to
be
joke.
that would
But
be a
yes,
shitty week.
it would be a shitty week. But I think that, because I think that even, like, I'm making light of it, but even when we are in our shittiest times, which is like going back to what started this podcast for me, which was like, for me in my shittiest times, the one thing that I would do was walk my dog. That was the one thing that I could do every single day. And that led me to coming up with this idea for this podcast.
Hmm.
But at the time, yeah, I was in the like, oh, I didn't realize how deep my emotional depression can get.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I had a lot of shame around that, around feeling as shitty as I was feeling. And honestly, I wish that I would have had this tool, because it would have given myself permission to feel the feelings that I was feeling. Because if you are feeling really shitty feelings and then you're also feeling shame for feeling those feelings, and you're hiding them from your friends or your family or other people because you're like, I don't want to feel like a burden. I also don't feel like I don't want to experience their judgment of my feeling. Like, it just ends up, and all of those things are extra boulders on your back, which just pushes you further and further deeper into the hole. And I think that having this tool where you could, I mean, like at the time, for me, it would have been like, I'm feeling super depressed. And that makes sense because my husband, who I've been with for 10 years, doesn't want to be married to me anymore and has zero desire to work on our relationship. Like, that makes sense why I was depressed. Like, there's
Mm-hmm.
reasons behind it. And that, being able to name something like that would have
Mm-hmm.
been really valuable to me. So I hope that people use that tool in the future, and that kind of like practices your own emotional literacy and
Yeah.
self-awareness.
I think, and something that brings up for me is this idea. Tell me if you relate to this at all. But when something we would deem negative happens in our life, or, like a life changing experience like that, I I guess you could call it judgment. I tend to go to this place where I'm like, well, I should be better than
Hmm.
like reacting to this. Like I should
Right.
know better than
Hmm.
to like sink down. Like I'm smarter. It is so interesting how we can label our own reactions, or how
Hmm.
we think we should be reacting,
Hmm.
or think we would react to whatever the circumstance or situation is that's going on. And so that, like you're saying, my therapist calls it the backpack, where
Hmm.
like you just start putting unnecessary things, whether it's your own thoughts or other people's ideas or thoughts that you're just carrying. And like you said, just weighs you down even more, of like, but it's this idea of just like, well, I shouldn't be reacting this way. Like I'm better
Hmm.
than this, and I think a lot of people, I see this a lot on social media too, in little sound bites and 1-minute clips, and they're very like ear tickling, right? Where they're
Mm-hmm.
very where it's the idea of just like, well, if you've been hurt, just think of what they're missing, or like
Mm-hmm.
it's on the, like you get
Right.
those where it's, and I think it's almost this like emotional bypassing
For sure.
tool where it's just like, well, you don't have to be upset because they're the
Yeah.
ones that
They're an
made a
idiot.
mistake. Yeah. And it's like, it's, in my opinion, it's all just so much more nuanced than that. Mind you, and that's, I'm sure a lot of people, they might be talking about like if you were in a very abusive or like one sided kind of relationship. But
Sure.
at the same time, as we were talking about, there's still attachment involved, no
Right.
matter if it was a great
A
relationship
healthy
or really,
relationship or not.
yeah. And so, no matter what, there is a grief process. There is going
Mm-hmm.
to be an emotional process to
Mm-hmm.
go through that I do think it is in our human nature to just want to bypass it and not, because my gosh, it's not fun.
Mm-hmm.
Even if there is a lesson to be learned from it,
Right.
which, like, I'm always looking for a lesson
Right.
because, like I just told you, I feel like I'm smarter than I should be feeling.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, but I'm glad to know that you relate to that as well. I was like,
For
is it just
sure.
me? Do I feel like I'm just better than my own emotion?
No. Well, because and that's for you, that's a version of hiding. That's a version of hiding from your own
How
feelings.
dare you?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to like over label our emotions, which I actually also have an episode about that, which I don't have listed here, but I think there was an episode last season where I talk about how the danger of over labeling our emotions, like when we label ourselves as depressed instead of sad, like there's a big difference between that. And I think that like especially as anxiety and depression rates have skyrocketed for like legitimate, clinical diagnoses of that, at the same time there's this flippant use of these words like on social media, whatever, and how
Mhm.
there's studies that I talk about in this episode where it's about how people, when they utilize words that are not actually,
They're not
like
accurate.
what's not accurate, you end up catastrophizing things.
Yeah,
And
it's like how everyone these days is a narcissist. You're like,
right.
is everyone a narcissist, or are we just kind of
Right.
selfish creatures sometimes? I don't
Right.
know.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
huge, like, have you ever dealt with a real narcissist? Some people
Right.
have. That's an
For sure.
extreme
Yes.
term.
100%. Yeah. Um, okay, this kind of brings me to the last tool here, which I think is like this is a perfect way to end it because this is from season 4, episode 3. And this is about our body and how our body signals whether something is good or bad for us.
Mm.
Because I think that, as we've just been talking about, our brain can like overthink, over question, over process, over label. Like our brain is constantly doing these things, oftentimes as a way to protect ourselves and a way to protect us from feeling our true emotions. But our body can't hide that. And so this episode in particular is about this idea of like somatic awareness in the body, and whether when you're confronted with a decision or confronted with a process or thought, like something that's going on, does the decision or whatever you're deciding, does that make you feel expanded or contracted? Is this something that makes you feel the warm and the fuzzies and the like, this is a positive thing in your life, or is this something that makes you shrink? And I think that I know for myself that my body does not lie to me, and I will sometimes be thinking something in my head and my body has a complete opposite reaction. And I need to remember to listen to my body
Oh.
because your I mean, there's a reason why they say, your gut instinct, like follow your gut. And
Mm.
that's because your body is separating a little bit. And I think, I'm sure there's some science behind that, which maybe I went into on in season 4, episode 3. It's very possible. Go listen to it. I should re-listen to it too, apparently. But I do think that you know, there's real value in reminding ourselves that your body always knows. Your
Mhm.
body keeps a score, which is another a really incredible tool.
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting. I have like because I deal with OCD, I have
Mhm.
an interesting I agree with you
Mhm.
in terms of the body absolutely gives you signals,
Mhm.
is a communicator
For sure.
instinctively, intrinsically. And yes, that expansion of like,
Mhm.
making decision, does this I always think of it as like, does it make in the expansion, can I breathe easier or does it make me
Mm,
feel like contracted and like, you know, it's
constricted.
always,
Yeah.
yeah, it's always about my breath, right?
Mhm. I love that.
But even as someone who has dealt with OCD, it's interesting because your body reacts to your thoughts as if they're real. And so
Mhm.
even when something is not actually happening, your body will communicate as if it
Mhm.
is. So
For
then
sure.
that it's almost trying to figure out like, okay, well what's really happening? What's a real thought? So then it becomes
Sure.
like the practice of having to slow down even more, get get into a more stable position, remind yourself of what's even true or
Yep.
happening or real. So it's very interesting because like there are times where I get a knee jerk reaction, especially when like listen to your gut, and I'm like, I don't know
Mhm.
what my gut is telling me because it's
Right.
freaking out. But I think for people who don't deal with that, I would say listen to this.
For
Yeah.
sure. Well, it's interesting because to me, I'm like, I I mean, I love disagreement, so bring it on. But I think that you saying, I mean, yes, 100%. Sorry, I'm going in circles here. 100%, our body reacts to our brain, and yes, there is, so many different synapses in our brain that are combined, and so like our anxiety and our excitement are the same
Hmm.
thing, and that makes our body feel things, etc. But I think that the biggest thing is that it may not be right in the moment. It
Mm.
may not be that where you're thinking, "Oh God, I need to make this decision. Am I going to have the chicken or the steak?" I mean, it's not that obviously, but it's the quiet times. It's the time when like later on,
Mm.
when you least expect it,
Mm.
and you have a feeling about one thing or the other. But I think that sometimes though we go, "Oh, but I'm not thinking about that right now." It's like, why did that pop into my brain?
Mm.
And it's like, yes, because your body is so good at regulating itself. And so your body is going,
Mm.
hold on a second. I'm going to reintroduce this concept to you, and I'm going to
Mm.
reintroduce it to you with a feeling. And let's see now how you're feeling about this.
Yeah, no, that's a great indicator of not in the moment, but on a later. Yeah, I love that. I love the way you indicated that, and that makes a lot of sense to me.
I mean,
Yeah, because it's
like,
always communicating.
totally. And I think that someone very close to me has a lot of intrusive thoughts, especially as it relates to other people, and is like, I'm endangering these people. I'm like, oh, did I do something? I mean, it's all like OCD spirals where
Oh,
it's
for
like,
sure.
what did I do?
I hate that for them because I just totally understand.
Yeah, like what is the thing that I potentially did that is going to set them up for failure, and I personally affected them in some way.
Mhm.
And when they come to me with these thoughts, sometimes it's about like talking them off the ledge and being like, let's have a rational conversation about this. No, that is not going to harm that person. Or, hey, let's think about it in this way. And that is when their brain and their body is connected, and they're in a state where they can actually have that rational conversation and everything's going to be okay.
Mm.
Sometimes they come to me and it doesn't matter what I say, they still go down that spiral. And I know in that moment that anything I say is not going to be helpful. And so I just have to go, I hear you and I'm listening to you and I'm here to talk you through it whenever you want to. But for now, I'm just going to like hold space for your feelings because I know that right then their body is overreacting, and so they're not going to feel that expansion or contraction or whatever
Mhm.
because their brain and their body is in just such a state of overdrive. And so
Mhm.
I think that like it is and this is where medication is really important for people because going to a psychologist who can go, okay, your brain and body is not able to regulate and you're not able to feel that mind body connection and be like what is and what isn't good and all of that kind of stuff. And that's where, you know, someone I heard talk about how like I don't remember which I think it was an depression drug, and they were talking about how they had felt for years like they were just like swimming amongst the sharks and it was just like blackness and they could not get out of this swimming. They were just swimming, swimming, swimming. And they said as soon as they started taking these medications, they were able to like get out of the water, stand on chairs,
Mhm.
and then be able to see, okay, that's a shark, that's a stone, that's a shark, that's a stone, you know? And
Mhm.
and only then were they able to actually like regulate themselves in order
Yeah.
to survey what was going on and be able to then like work through the things. Because that's
Yeah.
the thing is that like if you're in these spirals where you can't distinguish between a rock and a shark, you need help in order
Mhm.
to be able to have that distinction.
Mhm.
I also talk about that on an episode. I talk about the importance of medication. And obviously, you and I have had, a conversation before about medication.
Plenty of
Yeah.
conversations, and it's so interesting of like I don't know when I got to a point of kind of going back to being like, and I'm better than my medication. Like, look at that.
Hmm. Right.
And even the other night, my body was in such a tense, just like buzzing, I couldn't deal. And I needed, like, I needed some medical help on board.
Hmm.
And so I was able to uh, take a pill that just kind of released my body. And I was like, oh, okay. And it's, uh, I don't know why. It's almost like I forgot my entire mindset the last
Hmm.
20 years, but it's not something to be ashamed of to need medication, whether
Hmm.
it's short term or long term. You just you have to be able to function.
For
Yeah,
sure.
and function well and have the tools, and that's what this is for, that there are
Right.
different tools for your toolbox that are going to
Hmm.
cater to your uh, individual needs,
Hmm.
and that looks like medicine for some
For
people.
some people. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, those are the five. Thank you
Awesome
for
five.
going through this journey with me. I just find like there's so many important things. And
Yeah.
so I just want to thank everyone and thank you, Shelley, for being a part of this journey and thank everyone for being here, for listening, for showing up, for sharing your own stories with us, both guests and listeners. Like I wouldn't be doing this podcast if it wasn't for everyone's feedback and remarks and sharing your own stories. And it just makes me really happy and reminds me of the importance of community, which is something that I think we can lose sometimes. And that is the goal of this podcast is to really be a community and be a resource for everyone. So,
Here and on
of
board for the
course.
journey. And thank you all for listening. And we hope that you have gotten some great information and tools to utilize. And yeah, and like you're saying, just create the community because that's
Mhm.
connection is so important, especially in the mental health space and
Mhm.
in any space when you're going through a hard time. As
For
someone
sure.
who loves to isolate and not be a burden, it's actually the exact opposite. You need community and connection when you need help. And
It's true.
it's okay to need help and ask for help.
That's right. Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for being here. Please remember to be kind to yourself and remember that you and everyone around you is more than you see. Thank you so much for listening. This is the end of season 6, but as I mentioned, we are going to be having some remix episodes where I'm going to be re-releasing past episodes with little tidbits from me about each episode. So I hope you tune into those, and I will announce information about season 7 very soon. Thanks, everyone.